Hello, CICS Irving Park. My name is Heather Durham. I am Lyndon and Elise's mom. I'm also Haley's mom, but she is now going to a new school. But she was at CICS Irving Park for a long time. So anyways, I wanted to do a little walking tour for you guys and show you some of the tree species that we have in our neighborhood. I am a forester. I went to Iowa State University and studied forestry, and I worked for the city of Chicago for several years and the Care of Trees, which is a private consulting firm. Helped diagnose trees with insects and disease problems, and scaped streets with trees, and did a lot of fun things to help protect the trees in the city and to make sure we have more in the city. So let's go on our walking tour and learn about some of the tree species in Chicago. All right, enjoy. Hello friends, this is a linden tree. There's a small friend you can see enjoying, I don't know what he's enjoying, nothing from the linden tree. But if you can see this linden tree, you can tell the leaves are in small little heart-shaped images. You can tell there's some bugs snacking on them. But a linden, this is also a linden, can be really big and are found often in the city. Look for those heart-shaped leaves. These are little leaf lindens. Some of the lindens have really big leaves. Another way to identify the linden tree, you see these brackets on it? These little brackets here are also a helpful way to be able to recognize a linden. Okay, on this block there are several honey locust trees. The way you can tell a honey locust is that instead of having one single leaf, they actually have leaflets. There are other types of trees that have leaflets as well, like other kinds of locusts and other tree species. In the city, we have lots of these that are called honey locusts. They have a familiar bark too that you typically see. Happy silver maple. He's got a nice little face from the neighbor. Let's see if we can get a good picture of the leaf. I will also add some pictures of the leaf so you can see them. But silver maples are huge. They're normally the giant trees that are in the parkway. Earlier I was talking about how some trees have different kinds of leaves, like single leaves. This one, this maple, is a single leaf. Here's the stem that attaches to the tree. Here is a single leaf as well, but it's actually has leaflets, and this whole thing is a leaf. So if someone would pick off one of these little leaflets and show it to me, I would have no idea what tree it was coming from. But if they showed me this whole leaf, I'd say, that's a honey locust. Here's a little tree that was recently planted. It's a pear tree. It most likely, I'm not 100% sure because once again there's many varieties of pears. It's probably a Bradford pear. See how it has the wavy edges of the leaf? This will have beautiful white flowers on it in the spring. This is a crabapple. As you can tell, this one has several crab apples on it. There are many different varieties of crab apples. They grow all over the city, not always in the parkway because they're not a great tree for the parkway because they're low and people would bonk their heads. But they always have beautiful flowers in the spring. All right, now we're in the park and we're looking at a hackberry. These are the hackberry shape of leaves. They have serrated edges, which you can see where they look like a little saw on the edges. Another thing with hackberries is they have a familiar bark, which is kind of warty, all up and down it. You can see it. This tree is an aspen. This is not a common tree in the city. They're actually found more in Colorado by rivers and creeks. They have these little leaves and they're so neat because they tremble in the wind. Here's a close-up of their leaves. My neighbor here planted a couple of them because she used to live in Colorado and just missed seeing them around, so she waters them a lot. And they're doing really well. They have a really smooth bark. They're still young, but they will always have a smooth bark compared to like a hackberry or you know, some of the other maples. That's an aspen. Here is another type of maple. This is a smaller maple species. It is called a Japanese maple, and there are different varieties of Japanese maples as well. The Japanese maple will not get very big. They stay pretty small, so they can fit into little spaces. They cannot handle very extreme weather though, otherwise they get stressed out. So you will never find them in a parkway, but you will find them in people's front lawns or in their backyards. Right, here's a weed tree growing behind my house. It's gonna get enormous. It's actually called Ailanthus, or tree of heaven. And let me show you how big the leaf is. This leaf is one leaf. Here's my foot. So this leaf is like 3 feet big. That's a giant leaf. And it's just like the honey locust, and it has the leaflets. So this is tree of heaven. Sometimes they're in the parkway. They shouldn't be there. They're fast growing, but they're kind of invasive and not ideal. So here's some London plane trees in the parkway. They're not doing great. They only have a little bitty space, but look at that bark. That is how you identify a sycamore or a London plane tree. You might think it's sick, but it's not sick. It's just the characteristics of its bark. This one's a little stressed out though, so it's probably due to not having a very maintained well spot to live. Look at that. It doesn't have hardly any growth, any area for roots to grow, because there's concrete over there. There's tons of concrete over here. So all in all, it's probably not getting enough water and nutrients, so it's a little sparse. London plane tree. All right, here's another maple. This one is a Norway maple. They are often planted in the parkway. For many years they planted them, but then they realized that the roots underneath end up girdling themselves, which means the roots go around and around the tree, and it kind of chokes the tree so that nutrients and water can't get up. And it just starts to cause a lot of problems in the tree. There's still a lot of Norway maples in the parkway, but they've stopped planting them. This is not a parkway tree, but this is called a redbud. It's kind of like the Japanese maple, where you'll just plant them in your garden. They're beautiful. In the spring, they'll have little bitty flowers all up and down the actual stems of the whole tree, so it looks beautiful. But this is a redbud. It has a heart-shaped leaf as well. Here's an elm. Elms have little bitty leaves. They're not leaflets, but they're just little leaves. We lost a lot of elms in the city because of Dutch elm disease. There are new varieties that are being planted that are resilient to the disease. This one's not doing so great, but this is an elm. They have little leaves.
Are they known for
Here's a giant elm. This one is huge. It has the little leaves like I showed before, but there's none even halfway close. But this just to show you how big elms can get. They can be the biggest on the block. Okay, here is a birch. There are different types of birch as well. There's river birch and paper birch. This is a river birch. They don't always do the greatest in the parkway. They have these little leaves, not giant leaves as either, but here's something you can always tell with a birch. Look at this bark. It's super peely. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's just what the trunk of the tree and branches will do. This is a river birch. Pretty cool, huh? This tree is called a paper birch. It has the same kind of similar leaf like a river birch, a little bit different of shape, but the bark is white. This is a paper birch. These aren't normally planted either. It was probably planted by the owner and not the city. Paper birch leaves. So this is an ash. The city got wiped out of a lot of ash trees because of the emerald ash borer. They have bark that looks like that, and then once again they have leaflets instead of one single leaf. There's different varieties of ash as well. This one is old and dying. It's lost a few limbs, but it is an ash tree. Ash have leaflets just like honey locusts. Here is a bur oak. Bur oaks do great. Or it might be a swamp white oak. Looks more like a bur. They have similar shaped leaves. Both do well in the city. Oaks live a long time. But since they live a long time, it takes them a long time to grow big. But they will be big. And oaks have acorns. Here's the shape of the... But there's different kinds of oaks, so... This is an alder. There's not too many of them planted in the parkway, but check out those. They're almost like little pine cone-ish. They're hard. They start off green and then they get like a hard. You'll see them on the ground too. Little, almost look like pine cones, but they're not. It's an alder tree. There are some plum trees. They don't produce plums, but they have this crimson color. I don't know if you can tell. Purple color. They're not really in the parkway. Sometimes they are. This is not in the parkway. This is in a little landscape area near a street. But they can do pretty well with salt and so forth. All right. This is our first conifer we're seeing. This, my friends, is a blue spruce. You can tell because of the bright blue color. This one is in our neighborhood, and it is a giant. I'm backing up. This is called a conifer. They are trees that do not lose their leaves, so they keep their needles all year long. Unlike deciduous trees, like the linden, the maples, the honey locusts that drop them. So you'll always be able to tell the blue spruce by the blue coloring of its needles. And they're pokey. Spruce, you can tell if it's a spruce between a spruce, fir, but like a spruce is always pokey. A pine or a fir will be softer. Here's a pine that I found in someone's yard. It's struggling, might not be getting enough nutrients. But here the leaves are super long. And once again, there's lots of different kinds of pines. New species that, when you look at it, you'll see that it has needles, right? So it makes it a conifer. But the peculiar thing about this tree is it is a conifer, but it's called a deciduous conifer because in the fall, all the needles will fall off of this tree. So it is a deciduous conifer, which is called a bald cypress. And they do great. They're found in a lot of swamps and so forth, but they also do really well in the city parkway. Bald cypress.